Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 1980 Italian horror flick City of the Living Dead, which is also known as Gates of Hell. That's another title that it's known as, and this is a film directed by Lucio Fulci, who also directed other zombie films, other Italian horror films like Zombie, and as well as my personal favorite of his, The Beyond. Now, this is a film I've heard about, but I never actually got around to seeing until fairly recently. I think this is another film that was on the list of Fangoria's 101 Most Unheralded Horror Films. And it's a film I definitely was curious about, and I did like The Beyond, so I heard this is kind of a little bit of a precursor to that. And so I was definitely intrigued by the movie, and when I saw it, I'd say I liked it. I liked City of the Living Dead. I didn't love it. I mean, I would say, if you ask me personally, I would say it's an above average, entertaining Italian horror flick with some good direction by Fulci and some really good shots and some good sequences here and there. But there are some flaws though that bring it down for me and honestly make it not much more than an above average horror flick, but that's just me personally. I know this film has a pretty good fan base, a decent cult following, and I understand why, because it does have do some things right. I mean, there's certain sequences in this film that are really honestly pretty spectacular. But the rest of the film, to me personally, isn't nearly as spectacular as some of the sequences, the memorable moments of gore, so to speak, in this film. Now, City of the Living Dead is a 1980 film. It's directed by Lucio Fulci. It's written by Lucio Fulci and Dardano Sacchetti. It features cinematography by Sergio Salvati. It's edited by Vincenzo Tomasi. Features music by Fabio Frizzi. I really love the score for this film. I thought it was excellent. And it stars Christopher George, Catriona MacColl, who was also in The Beyond, Carlo de Mejo, Janet Agren, not Agren, Janet Adrian, or Agren, Janet Agren, Antonella Interlenghi, Giovanni Lambardo Radice, who has been in a lot of films that I've seen this year. He was in Cannibal Apocalypse. So yeah, so he was in that, and I liked him in that one. He plays a character named Bob in this. Christopher George plays Peter. Catriona MacColl plays Mary Woodhouse. Um, Pretty much your lead in a way. Your lead is Catriona MacColl. You also have another male lead, Christopher George, as well as another male lead in a character named Jerry, who's played by Carlo de Mejo. I believe that's who it is. Yeah, he's a psychiatrist. You also have Daniela Doria as Rosie, Kelvin, uh, Fabrizio Jovine as Father William Thomas, and you also have Michele Soavi, the director of Cemetery Man, who was also in another Italian horror film that came out this year. I believe he was in Alien 2 on Earth as well, in a bit role. So he's in this as Tommy Fisher. Now, Lucio Fulci also has an uncredited cameo role as Dr. Joe Thompson. You also have Perry Percanon, who plays of one of the gravediggers. Perry Percanon was in Cannibal Holocaust. So, so that's the cast and crew. The basic gist of the plot is this. In the small New England town of Dunwich, a priest commits suicide by hanging himself in the church cemetery, which somehow opens the gates of hell, allowing the dead to rise from the grave. Peter, a New York City reporter played by Christopher George, teams up with a young psychic named Mary, played by Catriona MacColl, to travel down to the town where they team up with another couple, psychiatrist Jerry and patient Sandra, to find a way to close the gates before All Saints' Day, or the dead all over the world will rise up and kill the living. And there's even this note there's this kind of warning that's on this gravestone in Dunwich that says these words: "Woe be unto him who opens one of the seven gateways to hell, because through that gateway evil will invade the world." So yeah, so that's the basic gist of the plot. I'm not going to go into the huge giant plot synopsis on this movie. It's pretty straightforward. It's one of those few. It's probably the most uh probably the easiest film to understand in terms of a plot line. I mean, with these type of particular Italian horror films, it's pretty simplistic. Pretty much just follows a basic plot structure. So now I'm just going to talk about some things about the movie I liked and some things that I didn't, and then give my final rating on the film. Um, for one, I thought Lucio Fulci did a great job directing the film. There are some instances where his obsession with people's eyes was a little bit distracting for me. Kind of took away from certain scenes, especially dialogue. But regardless, his directing is still really well done. He definitely knows how to set up his shots, and he really knows how to really emphasize a horror film's atmosphere and its mood. He's definitely one of the better Italian horror film directors in that regard. And he does a good job with a low budget. Yeah, there's some certain shots he really sets up really well, especially shots at night. With all these cloud, with the fog, little bit of fog and stuff like that. Does a good job setting up the shots of the zombies or the corpses or ghost zombies. I don't know what they are, because that's one thing I'm kind of confused about, because they have these random teleportation powers, which is really kind of it's just that's one problem I do have with the film. I'm like, we don't really need teleporting zombies, but it kind of adds to the charm of the film, so it's not a really big deal, but I could do without it. But yeah, Fulci does a good job directing. He's not as good at creating visuals as Dario Argento is, but almost nobody is, to be honest. But he's still really good at creating, specific certain types of visuals. The type of horrific, violent, gory imagery he's really good at. Uh, Argento's good at creating sort of surrealistic, artistic uh, horror imagery. And he can also do, some good, gore and so on. But there's always this sort of, even with his goriest moments, there always seemed to be this sort of definitely an auteur vibe to his films and to his sequences. Fulci isn't like that. He's kind of like in your face. And sometimes he can be subtle, but but not usually. That's usually not his thing. I mean, there's a few instances where he'll show like some, faces in the night or whatever, but most of the time he's right in your face. And that's how he gets some of the that's how this film has some of its most horrific and memorable imagery is stuff that's in your face and just unrelenting. And these are definitely moments in the film that I really like. Uh, and specifically the infamous gut puking scene. If you haven't seen that sequence, you're in for a pretty crazy sequence. If this woman puking up her own guts isn't bad enough, her eyes are also bleeding out. So her eyes start bleeding, and then she starts literally puking her guts out, and it's a well done practical effect, so that adds to the shock and the terror as well. It's definitely a grossed out moment, but it's definitely a moment that I liked because of its originality, and I thought it was an ingenious way of killing somebody. I I like it when horror films do that, when they come up with unique, interesting, intriguing ways of people's denouements, or their untimely deaths. This film also has that pretty intense death scene for Giovanni Lombardo Radice's character Bob, who gets a drill to the head, and it's a really well made practical effect. For years, I heard about that scene, and I thought it was a zombie that was getting that treatment. But no, it's he's not a zombie. So that makes this sequence all the more horrific, to be honest. And then there's some other yeah, shots and sequences, moments in the film that I also liked. I liked the idea of a blizzard of maggots. I thought that was pretty. That was definitely a very stomach churning moment because it was real maggots. But at the same time, I commend the film and I commend Fulci for going there. I really do. I think that's definitely disgustingly uh, ingenious to me. I think that's a moment of uh, disgusting genius by Lucio Fulci. And that was a pretty difficult scene to shoot, understandably so. Um, yeah, they did. They actually shot that with because the window opens wide and lots of maggots fly in. It was filmed with the help of two wind machines and 22 pounds of real maggots, which is crazy. I thought it was like Rice Krispies for a second, but no, they're squirming around, so it's real maggots. And that sequence I was talking about where Daniela Doria, she pukes up her guts, she vomits up her internal organs. The effect was done where by the actress swallowing and regurgitating a plate of tripe. And in close-ups, a fake head was used which contained a pump that spewed the organs out more forcefully out of her mouth. And you could kind of tell because hey, I'm a guy who's read like countless articles and countless books on makeup practical effects, makeup special effects. So I could tell that it was a practical effect, and it wasn't necessarily real. She wasn't really puking her guts up, but I still like the concept. I think the concept is of that death was very, it was wildly inventive, and it showed, it gave you a glimpse into Fulci's twisted imagination. And I actually think it was quite brilliant. I just wish the rest of the film was as good as that sequence. And this film to me was a film that was not terrible. I liked it. I just didn't love it because I felt when it wasn't having these really gross but at the same time interesting moments of terror or gore, it was kind of dull. I think the problem is I like Catriona MacColl's character, Christopher George I liked, but it seemed like they didn't have a lot of character development and they didn't have a lot to do at certain points in the film. Catriona MacColl, she's a part of this really tense sequence where she's wakes up while she's in a casket, uh, of course, buried in a grave. And the way that sequence was shot was really well done. It reminded me a lot of a similar sequence that Wes Craven shot in Serpent and the Rainbow, which just make me wonder, did Wes see this movie and get some inspiration for that sequence where Bill Pullman is buried alive? Because it has similar sort of camera angles and a similar way that it's set up. And so, but the thing is, the gates of hell, I guess they get opened up by the priest killing himself, and then the reporter and Cutter and MacColl try to go to find the priest's tomb so they can stop the gates of hell from actually opening up and, the dead walking the earth on All Saints' Day. And this film also has this sort of subplot going on with Giovanni Lambardo Radici's character, which I didn't really care for. I thought the character was kind of useless in the film. It was just a scapegoat for the killings that are made by these zombie ghosts. And for every cute, can't believe I just said that. I need to fucking wake up. I was fucking slap myself in the face or something. For every cute scene. Anyway, for every, what I meant to say was for every gut puking sequence, there is a lot of just padding. There's some sequences where these bar goers, they get attacked by the zombie ghosts, but it's all aftermath shots. Um, and there's stuff too where the zombies will show up and just grab some of the back of somebody's head and crush the back of their head and crush their brain. It's a decent effect, but it's repeated a lot throughout the film, so then it loses a lot of its effectiveness. And why are they just crushing people's brains? Are they supposed to be zombies? If they're supposed to be zombies, shouldn't they be wanting to eat the brains? I don't know. I'm just saying. But yeah, I think the film has some pacing issues at times. It because there's not a lot that's going on, and but it does build up to a pretty good climax. I like the fiery finale in the crypt. I think it's well put together. I think that's a well edited sequence. I think it's a good location. I think the setting is definitely well constructed of the catacombs and the crypt that they go into, and they eventually encounter the living dead as well as the evil priest. I like the idea of an evil priest. Doesn't really go in depth on why he's evil, which I think would have been interesting. Um, and then you have an ending where I'm not. It's a film from 1980. I mean, spoilers. Come on. I don't like the fact that they kill off Christopher George's character in the end. Just whatever, just add to the body count. I didn't really like that because I liked his character, and he dies, he gets his head crushed, and then we're stuck with the psychiatrist guy who's very flat and very boring. And he was a problem I had with the movie because I thought it was a very boring, bland character, and a bland performance. And so he ultimately, I guess, kind of becomes sort of the lead near the end, and he stabs the priest with the crucifix, and all the zombies or ghost zombies burst into flames, and the evil priest dies, and it seems like it's all over. But then the movie has this really stupid ending where it's just an absolutely forced shock ending, which I don't care for. Which is another problem I have with the film, where they get out of the catacombs. Some of the police and other people are waiting for them, just to see what's going on. And Catriona and MacColl and and not the priest, the psychiatrist guy, Jerry, they get up and they get out of the catacombs and they see this little boy who they had been acquaintances with earlier, and I think Jerry knows him because I think he might be his son or the son of his girlfriend who died. And so he ends up, the kid just runs after them, and then they act like he's a zombie or something, and they scream, and then the movie shatters, literally, and then it goes to end credits, and I'm like, what the hell happened? What the fuck was that? And then I actually read up somewhere, folks. This is this this is according to IMDb, I think. IMDb or elsewhere. It seems like this film it had a different ending. But what happened was the editor, he fucked up. He spilled coffee on the film, and so they had to completely cut out the ending and just shoot something or just come up with something they possibly could, anything that could end the movie. And that's why the movie ends the way it does. And if that's true, screw the guy who fucking spilled coffee on the film. What the hell? What is wrong with you? You fucked up. But that does explain why it feels so rushed, because it was. But at the same time, I can't say it's not a problem because it's still there. So yeah, that ending is one of the big problems that I have with the film, and it definitely does hurt it in terms of making it more than an above average film for me, as well as the slow pacing at times, the the whole subplot with the psychiatrist that I thought was boring. Performance by the actor wasn't that great either. Um, The actor is Carlo de Mejo, and I thought Giovanni Lambardo Radice's character was kind of useless. Good death scene, but it still felt like it was useless. It felt like it was something that belonged in a different movie. Didn't really feel like it was a part of the same film. And it also was inconsistent in a lot of its gore. So there are times where it's like gut puking, it's crazy, and then it's kind of just it's kind of tame, or it holds back, which was disappointing. So I could have used more gore. I could have used a higher body count. I could have used a little bit better pacing. I could have used a better ending, and maybe a little bit more for some of our lead characters to do. They do some stuff near the end, but until then, it's a lot of just walking around, running around, hoping they don't get grabbed by ghost zombies. That's really, it's kind of about it. But it's a pretty good flick. I liked it. I didn't love it. I wouldn't personally call it a classic, but you know, a lot of people do feel it is, and that's fine with me. But anyway, I don't know what else to say about City of the Living Dead, except that this was a film that I guess was infamous for a while because I think it was one of the video nasties. It also was banned in Germany 3 separate times, which is pretty crazy. It really is. This is a film that was banned in Germany 3 times over the course of 20 years. The movie was first released on video with the title Ein Zombie hing am Glockenseil, a zombie hung on the bell rope, in 1982, was banned in 1986, and a second video with the title Ein Toter hing am Glockenseil, a dead body hung on the bell rope, was released with several cuts. Even that version was banned in 1988, and a final version was released with the title Ein Lich hing am Glockenseil, a corpse hung on the bell rope, and it was heavily cut without any gory scenes left. Rumors say that the video distributors actually designed a new video release called Ein Cadaver hing am Glockenseil, and a cadaver hung on the bell rope, and in this case, the third version will get banned again. And surprisingly, this third version was also banned in 2001. So they did that just in case the third version will get banned, and it was banned. I don't know for sure if it's still banned in Germany or not, but it's crazy. Because other than the gut puking scene and the drill death, it's not that gory. So that's what's crazy. I'm like, other than those 2 sequences, it's not that gory. I've seen much gorier Italian horror films than City of the Living Dead. So it's so crazy that this is a film that was like banned 3 times in Germany. And I guess it was theatrically released in the US in 1983 as Twilight of the Dead. But due to the fact that both the title and the poster art were derivative of Dawn of the Dead, the United Film Distribution Company filed a cease and desist order against the motion picture marketing, and the posters in the of against the motion picture marketing, which included the posters and prints of the movie bearing the title Twilight of the Dead. And so then these posters and these lobby cards and these prints were pulled, altered, and then sent back out with a new title, The Gates of Hell. So that's why the film was called The Gates of Hell. And I guess director Lucio Fulci always carried around a bag with his trademark pipe and tobacco. And one day on set, he reached into his bag and he found a handful of maggots, which had been used earlier to film the scene in which the maggots blow through a window. The perpetrator of this prank is rumored to be Christopher George, the film's lead actor, who did not get along well with Fulci. That's one way to show your distaste and disdain for your director. Here's a bag full of maggots. I'm surprised he wasn't fired. That shows you how much of a good sport Lucio was. Anyway, I don't know what else to say about City of the Living Dead, except if it was rated out of 5 stars, I would give the movie 3.5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I think it's an above average movie. It's definitely one of the better Italian horror films out there. Definitely one of Fulci's best, but not my pick for his best, but it's definitely not one of his worst either. He's definitely done worse films than City of the Living Dead. But anyway, thank you for watching my review, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.